Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g. Welcome. How's it hanging at home, y'all? Are things feeling kind of stagnant? Maybe feeling the need for an energetic reset? That's the topic today, and you're here with the crew of
Ohm-g, the podcast. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome, welcome. Today we have a wonderful author. She has written a book called Sage Advice, Miss Dawn Leith Dougherty. Published by Moon Books, it's a practical guide to energetic smoke cleansing and house blessing. So let's take it away with Dawn. What do we want to know?
Well, this is Chandra, and I'd just like to say that we're actually on location today, guys. We are at the home of Dawn. Dawn invited us into her space.
Her lair.
Her lair. So if you never see us again, that's where we were. No. But I did want to say when I walked in, it's an older home. It's very big, high ceilings and everything, but it feels so cozy and comfortable. The energy in here was just like, it was like a big hug when you walked in. It was very welcome. Of course, it smelled divine.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the frankincense and all the resins and the blends that you have that she makes, which we'll talk about her store later, guys. But
she had to get the house prepared for us.
Absolutely.
So the demons couldn't come in.
Yeah.
And we came anyway.
Locked at the door.
It didn't work.
But it did. There was just a wonderful feeling when we walked in the door. So we knew we were in the right place for this topic. So Dawn, can you tell us a little bit about why you felt the need to write the book and what you're hoping that it accomplishes when it's now available for pre-order, but when it is actually released?
Sure. Thank you guys for being here. I'm so happy right now. This is so wonderful. Thank you. I wrote Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn, and I wrote my book Sage Advice about 10 years ago for my shop that I have online, Tree of Life. And I got a lot of questions very, very often about smudging, questions about certain herbs and resins and what you do with it and how it works. And why would I buy this kit? What does it do? How do I use it? So I kind of made an FAQ sheet. Ended up doing a lot of copy pasting of my FAQ and my inbox messages. And I kept adding to it. And I had so much information in there. I'm like, this is a lot for people to read. So I just decided to write about it and make an ebook out of it and just sell it on my shop as an ebook download. And I felt like I wanted to cover as many bases as I could for folks. And I could point them in that direction if they had a whole lot of questions. It was really good for me to sit down and do it. And I had fun making it. And I wrote it from my own perspectives of the blends that I make and my own little practices and my ideas about things. And my life got busy and weird over 10 years, and lots of things happened, including buying this weird house from 1890, and we got very busy. So I thought a long time ago about maybe editing it and trying to submit it as a book to a book publisher, and I kept putting it off. Wow, I'm not doing that. And then finally last year, I said, I'm doing this. It just hit me that I need to do this, and I'm going to do it, and I made myself do it. And last year was a difficult year for us. And so in the midst of that was when I decided I wanted to do something that made me happy. And so I just sat down with it. And I did a bunch of editing, and I wrote a few more thousand words and submitted it to a few publishers and Collective Ink. Moon Books is an imprint of Collective Ink, and they're the ones that publish the Pagan Portals series of books, if anyone knows what those are. So it's going to be a Pagan Portals book. And they reached out to me. They're like, we want to publish your book. Yay! So then I wrote 25,000 more words.
Well, we're glad you got to edit it down because there's some really good stuff in here about for me? Do you use sage? Do you use Palo Santo? Do you use frankincense? And what's the diff? Why does it matter?
Well, that's a lot. Let's see how we can parse that out. A lot of people kind of just go for the white sage because it's known more than most, I think.
It's comfortable.
It is. It's a beautiful herb. It's beloved around the world for many, many reasons because it's just great. It's just a great all-purpose calming. It's soothing. It's healing feeling. It's just got great energy, and it's what you need for kind of basic smudging as well as some heavy-duty smudging. But there's a world of herbs out there and resins and woods and from around the world, and there's different reasons to use different things, just honestly for experimental purposes too. That's partly why I got into the whole business because I just love it. I love the way they make me feel. I love the smell of all of them. And just I've had so much fun over the years just experimenting with them. I've tried different combinations myself, coming up with my blends and kind of made notes about how they made me feel. And you could use sage, but you can also use rosemary. You can use lavender for some similar purposes. You might want to use Palo Santo or the resin copal for a very, very uplifting high vibe.
I love
really
Oh,
good
yeah.
energy and just high. Like if you're at a party and you want everybody to go, wee!
So everyday use is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Say somebody has some negative energy in their house. What would you recommend that people use to like really do a good like spiritual cleansing of their homes?
That's a good question. If somebody, honestly, if they do this practice occasionally and they're somewhat used to it and they have somewhat of a high vibe home, you can kind of get by with doing just regular cleansing with basic things like frankincense and myrrh. They're not basic. I say the word basic, but it's not exactly what I mean. I'll come up with a better word. Or sage. But if it's something that's really bad and you really feel perhaps maybe there's an entity or something entered your home and just didn't want to leave and just kind of passing through and decided to hang out for far too long. Or if somebody had come to your house that's just not a great person for whatever reason, or whatever reason.
That residue left behind.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to go with something like Palo Santo. I make a blend with Palo Santo, copal, and dragon's blood, amongst other things. It is powerful and it is heavy duty clearing. I think probably the one thing I would start with in a case like that would be dragon's blood.
Okay. I'll have to pick myself up some today while I'm here.
I got you.
I have some. This is Lynn, by the way. And I just want to jump in, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but Dawn is my Reiki master teacher. So I've known Dawn for a while, and I've used every single blend that she makes, and they're all good. But I want to go ahead and address the elephant in the room, and that's cultural appropriation. So let's go ahead and talk about that, if you will, Dawn.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, that's definitely a major concern. It's an issue for people, and for good reason. I do touch quite a bit on that in my book without trying to go overboard about it, because my book's about a lot of other things. But I did want to make it a point to address some of that in my book, because I am a very practical, very earth person. I am very Virgo-y, and I try to...
Can attest. Go ahead.
I am a very woo-woo person in many ways, but I really wanted to write this book from a very grounded and very, very practical, non-New Age type of perspective. And I do talk about that because my husband and I are kind of a part of the Native American style flute community. So we have gone to many festivals and we know a lot of people in these communities. And it's very important to me to address cultural appropriation, what it is and what it isn't, because I have seen it firsthand many times. And I will say that we try to really go out of our way to be very mindful and very careful about what we do. And there's also an Indian Arts and Crafts Act of 1990, which is very important to know. And if you're not Native, if you're not an Indigenous First Nations person, there are rules you have to follow and you will get fined. But cultural appropriation, I think a lot of times is directed mostly to sage, to white sage, because it's an endangered plant in its natural habitat, which is Southwest California and northwestern Mexico. It's endangered in big part because of habitat loss and climate. There's a lot of people that are running around all the time picking it, pulling it up by the roots, or just hacking it down just to obtain the leaves. And they harm the plant sometimes by pruning it wrong. It's an herb that is not very easily able to be grown anywhere. For example, we can grow rosemary and thyme and lavender and things like that here in our own gardens to use, which I do use my own. But it's not as readily available as some other herbs would be. And it is very sacred to a lot of the Indigenous First Nations tribes out in that part of the country, and to the tribes in Mexico as well. And they use it in their sacred smoke bowl ceremonies. And cultural appropriation, using sage shouldn't be about cultural appropriation if you're using it mindfully and you know the origins of it, where it is, and you talk to it and you respect it. The sage that I use, sage that I buy, and most of the trade around the world that sells sage buys it from sage farms. Okay. So cultural appropriation with sage specifically, I think maybe we need to talk more about that. And I'd like to hear Native perspectives on that. I feel like a lot of the voices talking about it are people that are talking over Indigenous voices when it comes to cultural appropriation. So I do talk about that some in my book because I want to make sure that if you have questions specifically to certain groups of people, that you should address those questions to them for sure, first and foremost, and I will always defer to them.
So when I hear you talking about the herbs and the things that you use, I feel like you almost feel like they are a living being, which they are, of course. But I also feel a lot of respect from you with the way that you address the material that you work with and the energy beings, I guess you could even say. Would you say that?
I would, because I'm an animist. I am an animist. I'm a pagan, and I do talk to plants. I talk to them. I talk to the trees. I talk to the plants in my garden. I leave them offerings. When I walk in the woods, I bring little offerings with me. And I've grown my own white sage in my garden. It's only an annual here, but I will leave an offering when I'm able to obtain it and grow it and talk to it. And everything has a spirit and a consciousness in some form, especially the plant people. I call everything a people, and they're people to me. So yes, I do everything that I touch, that I make, that I buy in, or that I grow to put in my blends. When I obtain them, I talk to them and I put my hands on them and I thank them.
Yeah.
I respect the reverence.
Well, I think that's part of what makes your products, what differentiates them from just like going into any eclectic store and buying a bag of some blend or a bag of herbs, is that there's been the reverence and the respect and the time and the energy that you particularly put into make, just like you were talking about, the kind of like the R&D, like if I put these two together, how does that make me feel? And I put these three together, then does that make me feel differently? There's been a lot of intentionality put into what you're producing, which I think makes a big difference.
Yes, when I make them, I actually make them on full moons. And I work a lot more now with the planetary hours and the planetary correspondences. So I started making them with those in mind as well. If anybody does any magic, you know what I'm talking about there. So I do create them. I create sacred space in my work area. And I call down my Reiki and I turn that on and I work with them. I blend them with my hands. If herbs need to be crushed, I crush them with my hands. Unless they're just obviously too hard and I need to put them in the herb grinder. That's different. I can't crush everything. I'm not the hope. But yeah, I don't feel like it's excessive. I really do try very hard to sit there with everything and I lay it out before me and I do everything with the utmost attention and intention.
So tell us about your book a little bit. What can people expect to read in this book and find in this book?
Wow, a lot actually. When I first started it and it was an ebook, it was a lot then. I was like, well, there's like, I don't know what else I could write about. This is like all here right now, but apparently it wasn't because I write about 25,000 more words. But what you can expect from the book is just a very practical and grounded approach to incense, just burning incense in your home in general that are loose, natural, herbal incenses. You'll find in my book, do's and don'ts about what to do, some basic, some not so basic. I have a lot of background information about where in the world some of the herbs come from, some of the resins come from, the traditions, the cultures that they come from, the different places in the world, and why we use them today. Why, for example, why we may use frankincense and myrrh in the Catholic Church. If you've grown up Catholic, you're very familiar with that. And it's got a little bit of background in there as well. I have all pages and pages of information about specific herbs and specific resins in there with more individual properties and background information about those as well. I talk about the actual practice of smudging and house blessing, why you would want to do a house blessing for whatever reason. There are many reasons to do, and there are many reasons to smudge your home and cleanse your home with herbal smoke on a regular basis. I do talk about a lot of basics for people who just are interested in it and haven't ever done it. Maybe they've gone shopping and they've seen sage bundles somewhere and they're like, I know people light these things on fire, but I don't. Why? I don't know why.
Okay, Dawn, I had a question that I wanted to ask you. I know that a lot of people, when they are first starting their spiritual journey, they may have feelings of, I know a lot of people worry about blocks and stagnant energy, and you feel like when you're trying to get to a point of a higher vibration, when you're trying to raise your vibration. And I know when I began my spiritual journey, I felt intuitively like I needed to cleanse or clear or something of that nature, but had a lot of fear around it because I knew I didn't know what I was doing and had that fear of like, am I going to do it wrong? And by doing it and not knowing what I'm doing, am I going to invite something in that I don't want to invite? There's just that whole fear of the unknown. So can you give anybody any advice, like if they are just starting out or just getting curious about smoke cleansing or smudging or clearing, where to start, or is there even a right or wrong way to start?
There really isn't a right or wrong way to start. That's actually a really good question because I think probably that's a common theme. And again, the reason I wrote the book, because I had so many questions like that. So it's a great question. Starting out, most people are familiar with seeing sage bundles sitting around in a store somewhere. And if you've ever traveled, especially out west, you've seen them everywhere and every little shop. And of course, if you go to any metaphysical shops, you see them. And now they sell them in department stores. So people are familiar with the sage bundle. And I think when they think of smoke cleansing, or they just call it saging or smudging, they think of that. Mm-hmm. And they don't really realize maybe that there's so much more to it than just sage. And that's honestly a good place to start because it's readily available. And again, all sage that's grown for the trade is grown on big sage farms. And so it's safe to buy, and it's very well cared for and ethically harvested and ethically grown. And I think that is what is helping to save this plant, is these sage farms, fortunately. But sage, you can start with that because it's easy to find, it's readily available, and you just really need a little dish, or a lot of people use an abalone shell. It's very traditional. You see those too. You see the abalone shell and the sage bundle and a feather, and that's what is very evocative to people when they think about smudging. or burning herbal incense. And that's a good place to start. But there's a world of smudging out there. If you want to start with the loose incenses, you can use them singly, herbs, or you can use them in blends and combinations. And basically just light a charcoal and again, find another vessel to put it in, a burner, a dish, a shell. And you can do it that way too, and drop loose herbs in the burning coal. And I go into all of the methods for those in my book as well. But the easiest thing for people to do really is just to use the bundle because it's easy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you can hold it in a dish or a shell or burner as you walk around as it's smoking and wave it around with your hand. You can use a feather. That's a very traditional thing. Pretty much everybody uses feathers. Your hand is also perfectly acceptable to wave it around. Feather helps disperse it into areas of the room or around your energy field or your body. And feathers are traditional because it is thought by many, many traditions around the world that birds, of course, because they're birds and they fly, they are attached to the divine and they're messengers from the gods or the spirits or whatever we feel like choosing to call them. But feathers really on a practical basis are like a comb.
Mm-hmm.
And they gently brush the energy field and the aura of your body, as well as disperse smoke in a gentle way around yourself and your room.
Oh, I love that. Would you recommend a particular, I know you talk a lot in your book about rituals. Is there anything that someone who's like saging their house for the first time or whatever, is there a certain mantra or a certain intention that they should say, or is it just more like whatever their own intention is in their mind as they're dispersing the smoke to concentrate on or repeat in their mind as they're dispersing the smoke?
I do agree with that. I like to do that a lot. And honestly, there's not a need for it if you just aren't aligned with it. Find something that you're aligned with. There's a lot of agnostics and atheists in the world that get a lot of benefits from smudging and burning incenses and herbs, and they know it works. They don't want to attach anything else to it besides that, wow, this works, and it's science. There is a little bit of science in here too, because I like science and I agree with science. And I do know that many herbs are also very medicinal, and resins as well, including frankincense, extremely medicinal. And that mostly was the reason a lot of herbs were burned in ancient times, was the medicinal properties. And they just knew somehow that it rid places of vermin and smells and miasmas. They didn't know why, it just worked, and that's what they used. And it also smelled pretty. But the ritual part, if you really would like to introduce some intentional ritual to your practices, that's always a fun thing to do. It's not necessarily every time you burn a sage bundle or a coal full of loose herbs. But mantras, to me, I use my own. I make up my own. A lot of times I make them up on the spot. I do those things and then I forget about them. They're just for what I'm using them for at the time. And I do talk about that in the book as well, and suggest that you do that as well. And if you have a favorite passage from a spiritual book, if you have a deity or a being that you like to work with, and you have a mantra that works with them that you want to call them in while you're doing it, by all means do that. It's not necessary, but it's fun to kind of ground and center yourself for this practice. Light your coal or your bundle and have your intention for what you're planning to do. Is it just a basic house cleansing really quick? Is it
like, what are you asking that smoke to accomplish?
Right. Was there an illness in your home? You just need to clear out some of that energy. Did you have a big party? Everybody had a lot of fun, but there's still a lot of high vibration energy. You want to calm that room down. Because sometimes that needs, I've done that too. I've had people over. I'm like, Buzz, I gotta
get on out of here.
Get. So, have a reason in mind, or maybe you're having a holiday thing, or you're having family over and you want
you want to set the tone.
So figure that out. What is you're trying to do there? I don't always agree with lighting herbs, especially sage. as an air freshener type of situation.
Right.
Do that. I just light incense sticks for things like that. Or if I'm in a hurry and I just want good smells in my house and I don't have time to I'll just, I have plenty of those as well. I have boxes full of incense sticks. Most people have those. But to me, using plants and using the plant people in your energetic practices, whether you're making a ritual out of them or not, is very important to me to honor that plant and use them with intention. And mantras, you asked about mantras. I have a couple that I put in the book that I have found other places. And one of them is something I love very much. And I do use this one when I'm feeling really in need of a little extra spiritual help some days. It's the Green Tower mantra, if you guys are familiar with that. And I will sing that around the house as I smudge. It's the one that goes, Om Tari, Tutari, that one is just beautiful to me, and it soothes me and calms me down if I'm feeling a little
You just gave me chills. That was beautiful.
So that's in there, but I highly suggest you just find something. It really does create a vibration around you when you are doing something very repetitive, especially if you're chanting words of power, names of power. If you have those, if you work with any beings, use those names. Call upon your ancestors if you're really needing help, if you want them to be in your house with you and surrounding your home with their love, especially if you're doing a lot of clearing for whatever reason. If you've had some hard times in your house, you call on your people if you have them. Find a fun mantra that you write yourself. That's always important to me. I like making things my own. I'm very adamant about that in a lot of ways. Most of what I do, I've created myself. A lot of what I've written about, besides the history and the general purposes of things, I write a lot about the things that I've discovered and that I've found help me.
Well, a lot of that is owning your own power and not assuming that there's a higher deity or something better out there that I have to do it like this person did it, or like this deity says I need to repeat those words. It's that particular sentence isn't any more powerful than something that you could come up with. You need to step in your own power and claim your own power.
That's exactly right. You can read words on paper or you can feel them in your heart. And if they don't mean anything to you or your family traditions or your culture, even if it's something that you're not familiar with, it's not really going to help you that much unless for some reason you're really connecting with it. There are reasons why that happens sometimes, of course, as we know. But it's always best to find something that works with you, your traditions, your culture as well. Because again, back to the cultural appropriation thing, I want to talk about ritual for a minute again about that. Create your own rituals or find whatever path or traditions you are involved in and use those. Try to be mindful about other cultures, traditions that might not be yours, that you're not really connected to. And let's talk about the sacred smoke ball ceremony for a minute and some Native American tribes out west that they use, because that is cultural appropriation. You don't do sacred smoke bowl ceremony. We do smoke cleansing if we're not an Indigenous First Nations person. And there's a ceremony around that, and that is a closed practice. Sage itself is just an herb. It's a plant. It's a wonderful, very intelligent plant. Sage itself is not cultural appropriation, but the ritual around it, if you create ritual that isn't yours, is.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
One of my favorite things on your website, Tree of Life Designs, is the Palo Santo that's dipped in or covered in, is it copal? Why does that feel so magical and wonderful and uplifting? Explain why you dip that Palo Santo and what it does.
So Palo Santo is a wood that comes from South America and Ecuador and Peru. It's a tree. It's a small tree. And most people probably listening have heard of it, but that's another one that you will find frequently nowadays. It's very popular, but Palo Santo is very uplifting. It has like a lemony, almost a citrusy kind of,
I love it.
scent to it. I don't know anybody that doesn't love Palo. If you ever burn Palo for the first time, you're like, what is this? I thought there was only sage in the world. Now there's a million other things I can do. And it's the most wonderful thing when you find something like that and you're like, this works. This is great. This is the best. And if you're in a bad mood, light a Apollo stick. If you're low energy or you're just feeling blah or you're coming off an illness, light a Palo Santo. It is amazing. And copal is the same way. So when you combine those two, they are powerful. You will be flying high for the rest of the day.
I love it.
If you really need to raise up vibration around you or in your home, put those two together. And those two actually are together in my Dragon Power blend for a very good reason.
Cool.
And what is it made out of? I know the Palo is from the wood, but what is the copal?
Copal is a resin from, let me make sure I get the tree name right. It's from South America and is in Central America. And it's very, very sacred to Mayan and Aztec folks. And it is actually talked about in the Popol Vuh. And I'm trying to...
We're looking in the book, y'all.
I'm looking at my book because...
We've had a sneak peek at the book.
My memories don't always read.
It's a wealth of information. I cannot wait.
I'll just say I've already read it.
That's gonna be my new quote. My memories are not remembering.
So Bursera microphylla is copal. And there is different grades of copal. There is white copal. There's black copal. It is honestly one of my favorite ones, and it is again one of those very sacred resins that to the indigenous folks of the Americas. But it's fairly easy to get. I highly recommend it. I love frankincense. I love myrrh. I love all of the resins that are available, but copal is probably my very favorite, I think, for that very reason. It's just joy. It's like sunshine in a little crystal ball of plant sap. It really is. The resins are the sap of the trees that they are tapped, and they will scarify a tree to produce the sap, so the sap leaks out. So basically, it's like cutting yourself and bleeding. That's what it does to the tree. These trees are cultivated and cared for greatly, and they're farmed, and they care for these trees because they need to keep them producing for years. That's their livelihood. That's their purpose. So they're not wild crafted or wild harvested like a lot of other herbs are. They're very well taken care of in most places. As far as I know. Anyway, I'll just put it as far as I know in there. But that's what you're getting when you buy resins. They're just basically chunks of sap, and you see it's like pine resin.
Mm-hmm.
The amber. Amber is a ancient pine sap, basically, and that's what basically copal is. Amber. It's amber.
Nice.
So I have a question for you, Dawn. Do you have a bestseller blend for the herb blends that you make?
Well, my bestseller probably would be either my Everyday Hearth and Home blend, which was the actual original blend that Ed and I created together, and then the Dragon Power blend, probably after that one. Yeah.
So what's in the Hearth and Home?
That one was fun to create. That one has a white sage, yerba santa, which is another shrubby plant from out in that area of the world that is really good for respiratory issues. Mm-hmm. And it smells sweet. And it's kind of another little herb that's really uplifting and kind of almost has a citrus kind of a scent to it. And in combination with the sage, it's just beautiful. And I put lavender buds in there and juniper, which I harvest from my own yards always, and cedar, a little bit of cedar wood from Ed's flutes. Ed makes Native American style flutes. He's a flute maker.
We are surrounded by them now.
And you're in a room with 100 flutes in them. But when he bores a cedar wood flute out, he gives me the shavings from it. And that's what I use when I use cedar in my blends. So when he makes his flutes with love and intention.
That's what I was feeling as you were saying that. It's like even the wood chips are made with intention, like because he's making the flute at the same time.
Yeah, we had some loose herbs and things laying around and some sage at one point when he first moved in with me. And so I had all these, I know, we need to burn them and he's like, come on, mix them up. So we played with them and we decided to break them up and figure out the ratios. And I worked on that later on and made the blend that we have today. And it's stayed that way ever since.
So the intention of that is just to create a peaceful harmony in the home, is that?
I called it every day, again, because I'm a practical person and I wanted to keep non-woo. I wanted to keep it somewhat non-woo because to me, this practice is just for everybody and for every occasion. And there's no reason why people can't burn herbs in their house.
Well, it's just like lighting a candle. Some people just light a candle because they like the flicker of the light,
Right.
and some people light a candle with a totally different intention. So it's all. I mean, it is what it is. It's about how you use it and what you use it for and why you want to use it.
That everyday smudge, honestly, is for everything. Unless you have just something really ritualistic you're doing, or you have a really specific intention and it's just not going to work for you. The everyday smudge blend was created this way when I figured out the ratios and how I wanted to blend it all up on purpose, that it's one of those that you can just burn every day, literally, to keep your home high vibe and happy. And you can also, again, burn it after illness, burn it before guests come. And it's not so energetically uplifting like Dragon Power when you want to do really heavy duty clearing. And it won't calm your home down and bring you down so much that you feel like going to sleep. It's just sort of a middle of the road smudge.
I love that because, people light candles a lot of times, and that's like, everybody does that, but it has all the chemicals and stuff in it. So this is a natural way to like create that ritual, because sometimes even people don't know they're creating a ritual when they light the candle just to have the smell in the house. So I feel like this is so much of a more in-lined way of doing it with the earth.
Ritual too. People, I think when they hear the word ritual, they just picture somebody standing there in a robe and a bunch of candles and going woo, and saying a bunch of fancy words and stuff. But anything is a ritual. Your morning coffee in your favorite coffee cup, the way you pour it, the way you do all of your little rituals throughout the day, those are ritual.
Well, if you have a specific thing that you do when you first wake up, the first thing you do is write something in a book beside the bed, and then you open the blinds, and then you go and brush your teeth, and you do those same things every single day as soon as you wake up. It's your ritual.
Right.
I mean, that's creating a ritual. It's energetic.
It's energetic.
It gets you moving. So it's the same concept.
It's familiar to your brain when you have habits like that make you feel good. And they are ritual for you. And if they make you feel good and you're doing them on a regular basis, and it just gives you a little bit of a lift, or it helps you calm, or it makes you feel like you're doing something that's important to you, even though to someone else maybe it doesn't seem important. But again, like lighting your favorite candle or using your favorite cup for a very special cup of tea that you like to have at night. Things like that to me are ritual. Nothing has to be
like
super
squat.
I have a random question. Someone told me many years ago, I had been out at an antique mall and bought a new end table. And he said, don't you dare bring that into your home until you smudge it first. Yes. Is that something you follow?
I wrote about that in the book, actually.
Oh, okay.
So when you ask me questions, that reminds me of what I wrote.
Yeah, well, please speak on that.
I do talk quite a bit about that, actually. I smudge everything when it comes into this house. And I make sure I talk about that in the book. I feel like that's very important. Obviously, we live in a world of energy.
Yes.
And as an animist, everything I touch has an energy field. It's just the way it is. And it's not a big deal. You live in it, you live with it, you're swimming around in it all day long, and it's fine usually. But if you're bringing something into your home that's more than just the groceries or something, I do recommend giving it some energy, trying to clear it from energy that it has, because it will pick up energy from people touching it.
Mm.
It picks up energy in the manufacturing process. It might have some residual energy if it's not super highly processed, whatever the thing is, from the original material. If it's something made out of a wood or a piece of tree, it might have some of that tree's energy still in it. But also, if something has been sitting in a store, countless people might have touched that thing.
Right.
Clear it out, I think. You don't have to. Most people don't think about doing those sorts of things, but it's something that I do religiously, basically. And especially if it's something old. If it's not new, if it's something from an antique store, which is already a swirl with all kinds of
Yeah.
energy from grandmas and great grandpas and whoever's stuff, old stuff's in there. So much that. And in the witchy world, people talk about that a lot, actually. That's kind of a big deal to a lot, especially mirrors.
I've heard that too.
I know some people and some stories about people talking about that they brought things into their house that did have entities attached to them. You know, just whoever's they were, they didn't want to part with them, or they were very meaningful to that person. And they for some reason decided to attach to this hope chest or whatever. Yeah. So it's just a good idea, in my opinion, to give something that's a little quick energy clearing when you bring it in your house, especially if it's old.
Good to know. Well, that is some great parting advice without a doubt. And we highly encourage you to look on treeoflifedesigns.com and Dawn's forthcoming book, Sage Advice. I don't think you want to miss out on this.
And if they can pre-order this, where can it be pre-ordered from?
Okay, I'll give you guys the links so people have them. It is available now for pre-order on Amazon, as well as the Collective Ink and Moon Books sites, which I highly recommend going to those sites, and you can see all of the upcoming titles that they have coming, especially under the Moon Books imprint. And you can see all of the extra pagan portal books that are coming out besides mine, which are very fun and exciting if you're into those. They have a lot of them and they're wonderful. You can pre-order it from them, from Amazon. The book will be out on November 1st, at least in theory, I hope. It'll be out November 1st. And I will also have them on my website to purchase as well.
We'll make sure we have all those links for everybody in the show notes.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today on location in this lovely old home that has lots of good vibing energy. So check out Dawn's website, and we will talk to you on the next episode. Bye, y'all.
Peace out.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.